I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hey guys, so we are streaming from New Mexico. There is Hilaria. I'm not sure where her toddler is, but these two family members in court. Apparently, Hannah might be testifying today, or certainly she'll be called to testify. Whether she will testify, I guess we'll find out. So, yeah, welcome to day 2. I saw a poll on law and crime, and I think the poll showed if the jury deliberated today, what do you think would be the verdict? 49% say not guilty. Quite interesting. So less than 40% think that he would be found guilty, certainly on the people watching. Liesel, good to see you. Bria, well, I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you here. Bria, I'm actually hoping to go to France in a couple of months. I know you're not there anymore, but just FYI. Yeah, so there's Baldwin, this time wearing, I can't remember what he wore yesterday, but he's certainly looking bluer than he did yesterday. Got the glasses on. That's, I think, his brother in the background. I must say, when I covered yesterday, I felt a bit like the deja vu of what's this guy doing? I felt a bit like the Chair Daybell hearing, like Chair Daybell was like hearing the whole Laurie Vella case all over again. And to be honest, this feels a bit like hearing the Hannah Gutierrez Reed case all over again. A lot of the things we've seen before, the witnesses we've seen before, the evidence we've seen before, the arguments we've heard before. So one thing that we haven't seen is Hannah testifying. It'll be interesting to see what she says. Oh, are you in France? Oh, you're only traveling in Asia. Okay, well, if we are in France, then we must meet up and say hi, right? Thierry, good to see you. Pauline Buckles. Liesel, your thoughts so far? Do you think, it's kind of a dumb question, but do you think Baldwin stands a better chance in terms of all the evidence, basically the same kind of evidence, than Hannah? Obviously, there are a couple of big differences. Hannah has I thought she had quite a good legal team, but obviously Baldwin has the best legal team money can buy. Also, Hannah isn't necessarily known by, known to the average American, whereas Baldwin is pretty much a household name. Is there anyone in America who doesn't know who Alec Baldwin is? I think there's also the flip side to it, where you could say it's definitely the armorer's job to make sure that there's safety on set. But what about the person handling the firearm? The person handling the firearm, are they supposed to be playing around with it? Are they supposed to be pulling the trigger, pointing it at people? Are they not supposed to be checking it at all? Could they have been checking it? Definitely is a... So, Lisa, what do you think about the fact that he isn't being regarded as a producer? I mean, he was a producer on this case. What do you think about the judge's decision in that regard? Do you think the judge was afraid it would confuse the jury? Do you think the judge was correct, or do you think the judge actually made a kind of an error there? Yeah, I definitely think that is a real threat here. Is you could have just one juror who's in love with Alec Baldwin, and there's, I think, quite a good chance of that, right? Laura says, I thought I heard they were not allowing cameras. I'm not sure if it might be conditional, the whole thing, that Hannah can testify without cameras. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I really was surprised by that, because to me it's integral to the prosecution and to the prosecution's case. So, and the fact is, it's like a fact, he is a producer. So I don't know. I found that definitely a bit strange. Stimpy says the rule in the British Army is always treat a firearm as live. Yeah, I mean that is a good rule of thumb. I mean, you should never ever point a firearm at anyone in a sort of situation where you're not intending to use it, kind of thing. Mr. Apatorso says, I'd be curious to check the DA indictment. I think the judge referenced that it wasn't in the grand jury indictment. Susan also says, I think she made an error. Okay, I wonder when we're going to, it's already, Baldwin's having a bit of a cough there. I wonder when we're going to move on to this trial. It's already, time is ticking by. I think it's already 1 minute past 9 local time. So please make sure that you guys vote in my poll if you haven't already. I think it is quite an interesting poll. Let's have a look at the results so far. By the way, I've just seen on my feed that a
manhunt is underway.
A human body was found in parts in suitcases on a Clifton suspension bridge. So just something that I've seen that seems to be quite strange. So I actually used to live in Clifton, Clifton as well, but in Bristol. So one wonders what that's all about. So yeah, please vote in the poll if you haven't already. It looks like we are about to begin. Please just see where the poll is. Why did Baldwin's defense try so hard to get the case dismissed? 70% because they know they have a weak case, right? They obviously felt they had a better chance of winning this case by throwing it out than if it actually went to trial. It certainly looks that way, doesn't it? It looks like the defense are kind of gearing up to do a bit of teaching. They're going to sort of present to the jury some kind of whiteboard going on. Is that a witness sitting on the witness stand? Isn't that the line producer? Popple, what is her name? Anyone know who's on the witness stand right now? Pauline says, I would hope Baldwin's defense team believes he has a strong case. Clifton is in Bristol. in England. Definitely was quite strange. He actually got a lift there in a taxi, so the taxi driver is kind of a major witness. It is 9:04 in Santa Fe right now. 9:04. So proceedings are getting off to a bit of a late start today. Who is the state witness on the stand? I should know. He's got a funny name. Popple, or what is it again? I should know it. Or Pickle. Isn't her name Pickle? Gabrielle Pickle. I must say I was surprised when I saw her because her name makes her sound different to me how she kind of appears. That is Gabrielle Pickle on the stand, right? I don't think any of his children are there now. Hilaria is just to the right of Steve Baldwin, so just out of picture there. We did see her a moment away. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the defense try and put the responsibility on the other producers now that Baldwin is out of the whole producer equation. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, is it not Gabrielle Pickle? Who is on the stand then? Can't quite. Yeah, okay, so am I right? It is Gabrielle Pickle. As far as I know, okay, it looks like things are starting.
You're missing a chair?
So today's day 2. We basically, after today, will be a quarter of the way through this trial. Can you believe it? It's going to be about an 8. This trial will be over by tomorrow next week. So we're already, after today, about a quarter through this trial. Just FYI, I'm only going to be covering the morning session. And I might only be covering the first half of the morning session. We'll see. Okay. Yeah, I must say, I do agree with that.
A bathroom break or whatever, and you just need to be patient. We're trying to move the trial along, okay? So, thank you. All right, and I'm sorry, this probably isn't the most appropriate time, but media in the war room, or whatever we call it, one more cup, and everybody is not allowed to bring any liquids of any kind whatsoever. My staff is, and our county people are not going to be picking up trash that you all could pick up. Okay, and that also means downstairs in the jury assembly room. So one more cup, one more water. Let's just have some manners on picking up after ourselves, okay? All right, sorry I had to bring that up right now.
Is this witness still under oath, Judge?
Yes, she's still under oath. Is that okay, or do you want me to?
That's fine.
All right.
May I proceed?
Yes.
So Gabrielle Pickle is the line producer. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed had some interactions with her. I need this, I need that. She told her to focus on her other duties as well, I think. Anyways, let's hear what he has to say.
Good morning, Investigator.
Good morning.
Judge.
Is this Gabriel Pickle?
All right, why don't we look at these now?
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be 8 or 9
Are you
days.
keeping track?
Oh, this is Marissa Popple. So Pickle and Popple, quite a difference. Someone was right. Crime scene technician. Popple and Pickle. I must say they do actually look somewhat similar. Thanks, Earth. Earth, you definitely are on the case. Yeah, that's right, Bria. So, yeah, I must say I was underwhelmed by the defense's opening yesterday. It started strong, then it went all over the place, and they seemed to cross a couple of lines and got the prosecution to interrupt and interject a couple of times. I also thought it went on way too long. If you think about the two opening arguments, I thought the prosecution's was very well done, but kind of understated, kind of quiet, reserved. It's just the kind of person the prosecutor is, whereas the defense was indignant, emotional, a lot more engaging, a lot more flamboyant. Some people like that. Some people like someone who's kind of got that confidence game going, and the confidence game makes people think it's legitimate or convincing when it's just really about emotions, right? A lot of jury trials are basically performance art in a way.
Okay, good morning again.
Good morning.
So we saw a lot of pictures yesterday and heard about some search warrants that were conducted that you were present for. And I'd like to sort of divide what we do this morning into sort of two categories, the firearm and the ammunition. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. As to the firearm, I think where you left off yesterday is ultimately that firearm was destroyed in the test pit. Fair?
Not destroyed, but broken.
Yeah, the word broken, that I think I heard you use yesterday, it's fair to say that the firearm can't be put back in the original condition that it was in at the time of the incident. Is that fair?
I believe it could be put back together with replaced parts. But as far as, in my terms, destroyed meaning no longer in existence, it is not the case.
Right. No, of course. The gun and its broken parts.
So it's quite interesting. They're already playing like word games. The prosecutors, in a way, exaggerating, is saying, "Well, you guys totally destroyed the firearm," and Popple is saying, "No, just a part of it is damaged. It's not like the whole thing went up in and like disappeared in a puff of dust."
Still exist, right?
Yes.
But as being part of the investigation and entrusted with the evidence in this case, the gun will never be in exactly the same condition that it was in on October 21st. Fair?
Yes.
Then I want to talk to you now about the ammunition piece of this. And the investigation into the source of the lethal bullet in this case led you to executing a search warrant at Seth Kenny's prop house, right?
Yes.
And you knew that he had provided star line brass silver ammunition to the set, correct?
Yes.
What you were investigating at that time was whether it was star line brass silver and only dummies, or if it was Starline brass, silver, and he also had live ammunition at his prop house, correct?
Yes,
Also had live ammunition. You did know that Seth Kenny kept live ammunition at his prop house, correct?
I believe at that time we were looking for live ammunition, yes.
Right, but you were aware of whether you found the exact correct live ammunition that matched perfectly the live ammunition on the movie set. You did ultimately recover some live ammunition, and you had probable cause to get a search warrant, right?
Yes.
And did that concern you that at a prop house that's sending out ammunition for movie sets, that there was both live ammunition and dummy rounds?
Yes.
So I want to take a step back for a second. When you go out to collect evidence on a day like October 21st, 2021, you bring with you your Nikon camera, right?
Yes.
You have gloves with you, right?
Yes.
And in a perfect world, you're trying to get to the evidence and the state of the evidence as quickly as possible. Fair?
Yes.
And
So do you notice how he leads the witness? He does all the talking. She just says, yes, yes, right. And he basically is telling the whole story. Do you notice that? He's not asking her for information. He's actually giving her the information.
so you did respond to this scene, and the first item that you collected that ended up broken was the prop gun, right?
Yes.
And when you got there, you knew that someone had touched it without gloves on, right?
Yes.
You knew that when somebody collected it, they didn't take a photo, right?
Yes.
But you did take that into evidence, and that was sort of the first item in this case that you were collecting and entrusted to keep vouchered and maintained for the course of this investigation. Is that fair?
Yes.
And it was a critical piece of evidence. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And so as you continue after that moment into the scene, you're looking for additional evidence. Fair?
Yes.
And physical evidence is critical evidence in an investigation, right?
Yes.
Because, witnesses and their memories can change. Witnesses can say one thing one day and another day, but physical evidence pretty much stays the same,
I'm
right?
just objecting to a compound question.
Physical evidence stays the same, right?
Yes.
And you logged all the evidence you collected in this case?
Yes.
And all the evidence collected by law enforcement in this case was ultimately logged by you.
Yes.
And by logging it, you also make it available for the defense so that we have visibility into what in fact you collected.
Yes.
And one way you figure out as you're going through a scene what evidence is relevant is you can talk to your fellow officers, right?
Yes.
You can talk to witnesses, right?
I do not. As part of I'm not an investigator, I'm a technician. So my concern is with the physical evidence. I don't do any of the interviews.
No, I know you don't do formal interviews, but in this case, you did talk to Seth Kenny, right? You're not forbidden to speak to somebody who's at a scene.
No, I do believe we had some casual conversations, yes.
Well, but there are times where a witness could say in your presence, hey, that glove is very important. And they would say it to you and Corporal Hancock, and you would
I
know.
object to the hypothetical.
Overruled.
As I was saying, you and Corporal Hancock could be at a scene, and somebody could say, hey.
Doesn't he come across really self-important? When she objects, he seems to roll his eyes. But the other thing that he seems to be wanting to do is I think he wants to talk about Seth Kenny here. So I think a lot of this trial is going to be him basically saying what a terrible job Seth Kenny did, what a terrible job Hannah did, what a terrible job, as much as he can, what a terrible job Sarah Zachary did, all the mistakes that Dave Hall's made, and then say what a wonderful actor and person and human being and good job Alec Baldwin did. That's basically, I think, going to be his case.
That glove was used, and you as a technician would say, okay, that witness is pointing out that glove, that could be important. I'm going to I'm going to note that, and
So there's Hilaria over there, sitting over there, looking a little more subdued, I think, than yesterday. Baldwin's also not looking like he's having a bromance with his attorney, certainly not right at the moment.
once I confirm with Corporal Hancock, potentially take that into custody, to take an inventory.
Yes, that's something that could happen, yes.
And the other thing that you do is, and you talked about this a little bit on your direct, which is you can learn information and decide what to forensically test. Fair?
Yes,
So in this case, for example, Mr. Baldwin's clothes had red on them and you tested it for blood, right?
yes,
And it turned out it was movie set blood, right?
yes,
Meaning it wasn't actually blood.
correct.
So as you continue through the scene, you get to the prop cart and you find the shell casing. And I thought this was on just a moment ago.
All right, Joe, come on, we need to fix something.
You're doing what you're documenting.
Yeah, it's the fastest.
Just in the way. It was up there. It was up there that you had a problem.
And I'm putting State's Exhibit 29.
I'm just a minute, Mr. Spiro. I'm wondering if
Oh.
you're trying to figure this out right now.
So it's interesting they crawl at the bottom of the screen. They're saying Baldwin allegedly fired. Well, you can't say it as a fact that he fired because it's got to be proved that he fired the gun. And that's kind of an interesting thing. If you say Baldwin fired the gun and killed Alina, although it seems like that's exactly what happened, you could get sued for defamation because you're going to have to prove what you say. That's why law and crime are saying allegedly. And it's kind of on a technical issue like this, if the jury can be convinced that the gun couldn't fire itself, then the pendulum actually swings significantly towards the, if you think about it, Baldwin is pointing the gun at Alina and he fires it and he wasn't supposed to. If the jury believe that, then are they going to find him guilty of reckless behavior and negligent behavior? Remember, wasn't in the script for him to fire the gun. So either he did it, that was his own spontaneous, impulsive, intentional horsing around, or the gun just happened to go off in his hand.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. And I'm showing you Exhibit 29, and in a moment I'll show you Exhibit 28. And this is the shell casing that you recovered in this case that housed the lethal projectile, correct?
Yes,
And so, and in fact, you were able to then recover the actual bullet piece of the ammunition because you learned from Mr. Baldwin that it was at the hospital with Mr. Souza, right?
yes,
And so you were then able to go to the hospital and we heard from that officer, and collect the other piece of the ammunition, correct?
Yes.
And that's an example, right, of learning something from a witness and making a decision based on it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as to the prop gun, because you learned from Mr. Baldwin that he just manipulated the hammer, you didn't test the trigger of the firearm, correct?
I'm sorry. You're asking if I myself tested the,
Trigger, yeah.
I'm not qualified to do that, so it was not completed by myself.
Well, fair to say that because you learned that from Mr. Baldwin, it impacted the way that you evaluate the evidence. In this
I
case.
object to the form of question. Can we approach?
Yeah, that's true. I don't think it's going to be difficult, but you must remember he did the cross straw before lunch. They then came back and then he did the cross straw again, and that's when the incident happened. That's how I understand it.
Yep. Page 3. You spoke to Mr. Baldwin at the scene, correct?
Briefly, yes.
Okay. And he informed you that he just manipulated the hammer, and that impacted your future testing, correct?
I don't recall what he exactly stated on the scene.
Okay. Well, let me just approach you for a moment.
Counsel, I'll need a copy.
Sure. We'll provide you a copy.
Before you approach the witness.
We're also going to need, while they're looking for that, why don't we approach?
So now might be a good time while we're kind of in a break, just to, I don't know how long this break's going to last though. So I got an alert on Google with my name on it, that someone had mentioned me somewhere. And so I clicked on the link, and lo and behold, a Minnesota lawyer, an American publication called Minnesota Lawyer. It's a publication that serves local attorneys and other legal professionals. It provides them with legal.
Page in line, please.
Yep.
I knew that was going to happen. Okay, I'll talk to you guys about it a bit later. Must say, this isn't a very good start for the defense. It's been quite stuttering. They haven't really gotten going, have they? So 9:30 in the morning local time.
Page in line, counsel.
Yep. Page 3, lines 9 through 11. And I'm showing the witness. Does this, and as you can see from up here, this is a lapel camera from 1021, a lapel recording from. And do you see this answer here?
Yes, I see it.
And so, does that refresh your recollection that Mr. Baldwin told you that he cocked the gun?
I don't recall that conversation.
Okay. But you don't dispute that it happened?
No, I don't dispute it. I just don't recall it.
So, did But when you made the request,
Objection, let's approach.
Wow, he's really not off to a great start. Baldwin looks pissed, doesn't he? Look at Baldwin's face. He looks really annoyed. I wonder what it's like being Baldwin's lawyer. Like, at the end of the day, does Baldwin basically rap him over the knuckles and tell him, you need to do this, I want more of that? I mean, he is paying him a fortune. I'm disgusted with that, blah, 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 blah. I wonder who kind of wears the pants in the relationship, the client-attorney relationship here. At the end of the day, I wonder, I would love to be a fly on the wall in terms of the conversations they have with one another. Look, some of your comments. Yeah, I mean, Popple definitely isn't terribly enamored with this attorney either. Like, I think a lot of the investigators know what they know, and I think they sort of feel like this whole, they've already gone through this with Hannah. I think they sort of feel like this is kind of a bit of a kind of like a circus act, a very polished circus act, and now they've got to kind of dance around again, and they don't really want to do that, Nate in SoCal says it may have been damaged in testing, but I've yet to see a single expert or gun owner who doesn't insist that there's no way that model gun to fire without putting the trigger. Yeah, as you say, who doesn't insist? Yeah. I'm going to say something funny. I remember we had a gardener who was mowing the lawn, and then he went over so there's an electric lawnmower, and then he kind of was going in circles or whatever, and then he went over the cord, of the lawnmower. So he went over the cord, and the thing snapped the cord, and obviously the lawnmower stopped working. And then we were sitting in the lounge, and he came in, poked his head, and he said, excuse me, the lawnmower has broken. And I just remember thinking that you made that sound like it broke itself. You didn't say, sorry, I made a mistake. I went over the cord, and so it's not working now. You just said it's broken. Like, it just suddenly didn't work anymore. And I think it's a similar kind of defense Baldwin is using, is that it's got nothing to do with me. The thing just had like a life of its own, and the thing is defective, not me, right?
Just to go back to the spent shell casing for a moment, was the spent shell casing collected from inside of the church or on the cart?
On the cart.
And another question is, do you know if Mr. Baldwin's fingerprints or DNA were on the trigger of the firearm?
I do not know those results off the top of my head.
Okay. Is there a better witness that may come in to tell the jury that?
Yes.
Okay.
Now just think about that comment that is made. Was Mr. Baldwin's fingerprints or DNA on the trigger? Now, the trigger is small. It's a small little metal, what's the word? Like fragment. It's a small little, almost looks like a large comma, right? Are you really going to be able to get a fingerprint off that? But think about what the symbolism of that question is, which is, can you prove that his finger was on the trigger? Meaning, is there evidence that his finger was on the trigger? One thing that I don't know if they did do was that did they test his hands for powder burns, where he washed his hands? I can't quite remember that, but that would be quite important. Did he not feel powder burns? did he not feel the ricochet? Because it was ultimately a live round. Did he not hear how loud it was? I think Joel Souza said it was the loudest sound he'd ever heard, or something like that. Or somebody said that. What's the other thing? Now, you can say maybe there was no DNA on the trigger, maybe there was no fingerprints on the trigger, but what was he holding the gun or not? So, but this is the way he's trying to bring about doubt. He's trying to just seed the jury's mind with doubt. The lever, yeah.
And, you were interacting, as we were left off, with Mr. Baldwin at the scene and spoke to him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And after speaking to him, did you in fact test the hammer of the, did you in fact request to test the hammer of the firearm for prints and DNA?
Same objection. That doesn't lay the foundation. It has to go to why she did what she did.
It's the first question, and then I'll ask why she did or didn't.
Overruled.
Did you, after?
Well, I must say the prosecution haven't done well in objecting and getting them sustained. I think almost every objection's been overruled.
After speaking to Mr. Baldwin, did you then test?
The camera wasn't rolling, no. The camera was rolling during a rehearsal where it didn't go off. But of course, you could say that when the camera was rolling, what you're seeing there, isn't that representative of what happened later? And the answer is yes.
Test the hammer of the gun for DNA or fingerprints, or request that it be done?
The request that was made was after a conversation with the lab, which essentially was asking them what assistance they could provide. I believe the request was made for latents and DNA. I don't recall the specifics of what on the item they were going to specifically test. I don't know their requirements or standards when they receive a firearm. Most labs would do the testing on the entirety of the gun, but they might break it down further and do just the trigger, just the hammer, just the rough areas. I'm not certain.
So Lisa says everyone knows he was holding the gun. That does seem to be the point, and that does seem to be the overarching. Wow, I've just seen a. Anyway, but the legal aspect here is, did he pull the trigger? Can you prove that he pulled the trigger, right? And that's what the defense is trying. It's that sort of anal area about, can you prove he pulled the trigger? How do you know for sure that he pulled the trigger, etc.?
Certain. That's a question for their lab.
Right, but I'm just asking you, Investigator Papa, when you made the request, did you specify, given what we've learned now, we really want you to check the hammer specifically? Did you make that request?
I don't recall specifically requesting that.
And when you got to the prop cart, you could not tell from looking at it whether or not anybody had altered or moved any of the evidence, correct?
Correct.
And if somebody did, that would be a pretty serious problem in a case like this, wouldn't it?
It would be a problem in any case, yes.
Did you ever interview or review any interviews of Sarah Zachary?
No.
But one thing that you did know at this time for certain is that you were looking for Starline brass silver .45 ammunition, correct?
At that time, no, we did not know that that's what we were looking for.
When did you learn that?
That was learned later on once realizing that all of our suspected live rounds were Starline brass with a silver primer.
So all of the live rounds at the movie set were Starline brass, nickel primer, live, right?
Yes.
And this idea came up early in the investigation that what if somebody sabotaged the set and put those live rounds there? Do you recall that?
Yes.
And that was quickly dismissed in this case as not something that law enforcement thought to be realistic. Fair?
Yes.
But you also needed to investigate whether somebody from outside of the Rust set was responsible for injecting these live ammunition into the Rust set. Fair?
Yes.
And so you continue to investigate that as this case proceeds and you executed search warrants, correct?
Not myself personally investigating it, but I believe that was something that was being investigated.
So, we looked at, and I'm just going to show you defense A1.
So if he's going to blow air, if he's going to fuel this conspiracy that someone intentionally brought live rounds onto the set to jeopardize the production, to sabotage the production, I don't know. If he's going to do that, then I must say, wow, this is the best you can do. I mean, if that's what he's doing, I don't know if he is, but he's just mentioned it. Is that the best you can do? Wow.
And what's this a picture of?
These were some of the rounds that were located loose on top of the cart.
And these live rounds being loose on top of the cart, I mean, you don't know whether those live rounds were there at the time of the incident, right?
Correct.
And again, these were all Starline brass, nickel primer live, correct?
Yes.
And you were also not certain at times when you would collect rounds, whether or not they were live or dummies.
Correct.
Some rounds you submitted to the FBI to process to figure that out.
Yes.
And if we could look at State's Exhibit 27, can you tell me what that is?
This is a photograph of the silver primers on the 2 rounds that were later discovered to be live that were on the top of the cart.
And so in this box you then collect, which is defense A2, right? What was your understanding of this box?
My understanding was this was the box handed to Lieutenant Benavidez that was being pulled from at the time to load the firearm. I was then placed in his unit and later collected by myself.
And when you looked inside of that box, State's Exhibit 17, what did you find?
These were the rounds inside of the box.
And can you tell the jury the significance of that round?
Yes, this round with the silver primer was a live round.
But you don't know whether somebody was rifling through this box and just missed one, do you?
No.
And you also showed the jury that these Starline brass nickel live rounds were found in other places on the set, right? This is State's Exhibit 16.
Yes.
And what is this?
This is a close-up of one of the gun holsters that has a live round in it.
Okay. And State.
I say this under correction, but I think that was actually Alec Baldwin's bandolier. I do know a live round was found in his bandolier. So actually in his outfit, there was another live round.
State's Exhibit 15.
This is a close-up of the gun holster that was belonging to Mr. Baldwin that has a live round in
There
it.
you go.
And was then 15, this is 15. Was 16 the one that was the other actor, Jason Eccles?
Yes.
Oh, so that was
Okay.
okay.
And so Mr. Eccles, another actor on the set, turns out that he, as he acted, as he performed, had a live bullet in his bandolier, correct?
Yes.
And you have no reason to think Mr. Eccles had any idea that was there, right?
Correct.
True.
Your working theory, as you evaluated the ammunition and looked at the similarity between the Starline nickel live and the Starline nickel dummies, is that they could have been easily commingled. Fair?
Yes.
In other words, somebody could have mistaken one for the other, right?
Yes.
So is is the case being kind of started by the defense? Is this the defense case? Because what's actually happening now is the defense are cross-examining, but this has been going on so far all morning, so far for the first hour. And so this is also quite a clever strategy from the defense. The first time or the second time you get to cross-examine someone, you just spend so much time that the jury actually forget that this is actually the prosecution's turn to present evidence. And so you take the momentum out of the prosecution's hands, you take the impetus out of the prosecution's case by just going on and on and on and on. And basically, I mean, doesn't this feel like, oh, the defense presenting their case? No, this is actually supposed to be cross-examination. Aren't they supposed to be cross-examining her on what she's just said? Anyway.
And so when you conduct then a search warrant on the church, you find additional evidence, right?
Yes.
And you talked about search warrants in your direct examination, but I just want to orient the jury a little bit to what that is. A search warrant is where you go to a court and you swear out a warrant, and the warrant tells you what you can search for inside of a dwelling or a location, right?
Yes.
And you tell the court what information you have and what you'd like to look for. Fair enough?
Yes.
And unlike somebody sort of, walking into the precinct and voluntarily giving you evidence, one of the things about a search warrant is you don't have to tell the person you're coming before you go, right?
Yes.
So as you're going into execute the search warrant on the church, and the warrants in this case, you did discuss that with Corporal Hancock, correct?
Yes, I believe we had some brief conversations about the search warrants.
And the warrant for the church, it didn't indicate that if there was any specific crime you were looking for. Is that fair?
I don't recall.
And so when you went inside of the church, you were looking for evidence, right?
Yes.
And you remember, as you ended your direct examination yesterday, Ms. Morrissey, the prosecutor, said, you keep all of this evidence so that if anyone who wants to bring any evidence, you have it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things you found in the church was the shot list for the dead, right?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall collecting paperwork inside the church?
Yes.
Okay. And
Your Honor, I've already indicated to Mr. Spiro that I object to some of these, so we can approach now. I wish we had dealt with it previously.
no, I think I can just lay it and introduce it.
Well, she said she objected.
So what is your sense of the judge's position on this? Like, Hannah has already been found guilty, and the judge did say out of her own how she kind of seemed to express her contempt for Hannah, saying, you really not showed any remorse, which I thought was fair. But how do you think the judge feels about Baldwin? She's already given the defense a big assist in saying, well, let's take the fact that he's a producer out of the equation. So now he's a lot more his responsibilities are now curbed, constricted. If you could read her mind, what do you think the judge thinks about this case? I have to say, to me, she seems to be favoring Baldwin's side, doesn't she? She seems kind of anti the prosecution, unless the prosecution are being frivolous. I don't know if Liesel is still here. Do you think the prosecution are acting improperly, acting unreasonably, acting What are your thoughts? Because what if the judge and she knows the law is favoring Baldwin, you can imagine that the jury are getting a bit of a clue, a signal, of perhaps being influenced in that regard. I remember in Depp versus Heard thinking that the judge seems to be kind of friendlier to Camille Vasquez on that side, and she seemed to have contempt for the prosecution, which I think was actually the case. In the Karen Reed trial, I feel like it's the opposite. That that judge seemed to be not particularly friendly to the defense. Is it relevant? I think it is, because the jury do get a sense from how the judge treats and runs the whole courtroom. Let's look at some of your comments. Susan says, I think she's pro Baldwin. Heidi says, I think Baldwin. Okay. And I must say, I kind of get a sense that the judge isn't, in terms of the law, isn't. Anyway, let's leave it at that. Yeah, exactly. It shouldn't be noticeable. It shouldn't be noticeable. And maybe the judge kind of feels irritated that she's going through the same trial all over again. And, we've already convicted the person responsible of this immature armorer, this immature, inexperienced, clumsy, careless armorer. And look at Baldwin. He's polished, he's respectable, he's whatever. And so one does wonder whether the judge has sort of got that going on in her mind. What does Yvonne say? Is it true that the judge ruled against bringing in? I'm not sure. I actually don't know. It could be because of the grand jury. Yeah, it could be because of the grand jury charges that they had to rule on. So it could be that. It's a good question. I don't know that for a fact. Yeah. I just want to see if I can get some confirmation on this. I must say, today's off to a really slow start. I didn't really want to do much talking. Alec Baldwin, producer. So if we go to this article from the Associated Press, Alec Baldwin's grand jury indictment opens up two paths for prosecutors. The lead actor and co-producer on Rust, Baldwin pointed a gun at cinematographer. So there you have it. The indictment provides prosecutors with two alternative standards. Negligent use of a firearm, and what's the other? Without due caution or circumspection. Baldwin as co-producer. So I don't know, it seems to me that it was part of the grand jury thing. I don't know whether I've missed something. Production managers took little or no action to address 2 misfires on set before the fatal shooting. So I don't understand the judges.
Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court.
All right, jury.
Baldwin looks pleased. It's been a horrible morning session. I mean, yeah, I guess let's hope for a better next session.
All right, we're going to recess.
Okay, so we have jumped ahead in time, but we're still waiting for the recess to end. It might be another 5 or 10 minutes. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Accident or someone got shot should be known. Yeah, no, there were something like 6 live rounds on the set. 6, I'm not sure if that includes the actual live round that killed Alina. Something like 6 or 7. Mel says it was Baldwin, the actor, who was handling the gun, not Baldwin, the producer. But it's a mistake to think of this case as just on the day that this happened and just the moment inside the church. You've got to see the whole mechanism, the whole system, the whole tragedy of errors, the whole production process, the hiring of the armorer, the cost cutting, the rushing around, the way they handled or didn't handle safety issues, the way they handled or didn't handle the people walking off the set, all that kind of thing. So it's actually not it's not only about the actor. It's definitely not just that. Yeah. Nate says, I thought the judge issued a ruling that extremely limited. Yeah, well, that's exactly it. That is exactly it. But the question is, why did she do that? She said because she didn't want to confuse the jury. I don't know if it's that confusing. You know, it's a short trial, and it's here's his role as an actor, and blah blah blah, and here's his role as a producer, blah blah blah. It's, how difficult is it? I mean, essentially, they are putting one of the arms of the prosecutions behind their back. It's basically saying you can only punch with one hand in this fight with the defense, when really Baldwin had a dual responsibility. So, you know, if you say the armorer had one responsibility and her responsibility was weapons, and you say Alec Baldwin as the actor didn't really have that much responsibility, he was the actor. Okay, fair enough. But then he had another responsibility as producer, which is he needs to he has to some extent a management aspect. And so I don't think you can say when he's sitting in that church he's an actor and suddenly he's not a producer anymore. He's both. When he's acting, you could say he's not a producer, but he actually co-wrote the script. The whole movie is basically his baby. It's called Rust. He plays the character Harlan Rust. He co-wrote the script. He's one of the producers, but I mean, a big driving force of this whole movie was Baldwin. So, you know, it's, I don't know, it's one thing I want to share with you guys. So a publication called Minnesota Lawyer. Can you guys read this? In its About Us section, it serves local attorneys and other legal professionals. In a section of their online portfolio titled Expert Testimony, an article describes the conundrum presently facing the law enforcement, and the justice system. dealing with the surveillance of criminals as sharpened. So from our perspective, from law enforcement's perspective, our surveillance has improved. Cell phones, CCTV, GPS data. But what is easy to forget is their surveillance of us has sharpened as well. In the same way that we are consuming true crime and watching true crime, criminals are as well, would-be criminals are as well. And so it's interesting that this publication has picked up not only this aspect via my coverage of the Rex Human case, but also accepted the value and legal scope of criminal
network as we
intertextuality.
continue our coverage in New Mexico for day 2.
Okay, let's not do that. I didn't mean to do that. Can you see this article over here, Exemplary Evidence, the Paradox of Surveillance? If you click on that, it's under section Expert Testimony. If you click under that, it comes to this article, Exemplary Evidence, the Paradox of Surveillance. And then it's written by these writers, John J. Carney and Brendan Kenny. And they then talk about Dr. Edmund Locard's exchange principle that every contact leaves a trace. And then they refer to 3 consequences of the widespread understanding that every contact leaves a trace. Number 1, intertextuality. Have you guys ever heard that word? 2, anti-forensic efforts, and so on. But here's the pertinent quote. What is intertextuality? And then they say, prolific true crime writer and true crime rocket science YouTube content creator defines criminal intertextuality as the tendency of criminals to be influenced by other crimes during premeditation. Then they've got these links, 1, 2, 3. And these links then take you down to the notes, my Twitter, and then my blog over there, 1, 2, and 3. And there's the actual quote, criminal intertextuality, the tendency of criminals to be influenced by other crimes during premeditation. There it is. Tendency of criminals to be influenced by other crimes during premeditation. I have pointed out the likely knowledge that high-profile criminal defendants, most recently Brian Koberger, that should be a Y, I think, Rex Human and Barry Morphew, were aware of the effect of forensic evidence in earlier high-profile cases. And then they go on to talk about digital forensics. Now, when you read this article, you might think, wow, intertextuality has suddenly gone mainstream. But it's actually not part of the lexicon. Have you heard about intertextuality anywhere else except on this channel? So obviously, I've been using it for some time now. Not only criminal intertextuality, but to some extent cultural intertextuality, intertextuality in general, in a sense. And I've obviously posted, this has been on Crime Rocket for some years now. So it is good, I've just written that here, it is good, it is validating to see legal professionals, these aren't just bloggers, these are legal people, adopting some of the standards, the concepts, the terms, the definitions, the ideas set out on this channel. And it's not something that I came up with yesterday. This was published yesterday in the Minnesota Lawyer. But I came up with this years ago. And so I think it does go to show that true crime rocket science actually is true crime rocket science. Would you guys agree? So let's just see where we are with this.
Of the Alec Baldwin
very shortly. I mean,
yeah, so we are going to go back to that. But I have to say, I've worked very hard. I've written a lot of books on cases. I've developed lots of original thinking and deep psychological concepts. And nothing has really happened with that. And maybe it will take time for it to catch on, but it certainly is a good step, what you saw there in Minnesota Lawyer. So let's hope that's the start of things to come. I'd hate to be the most Van Gogh voice in true crime. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. Robbie says, once at my daughter's uni regarding English literature, and I pricked up my ears. So some people say to me, you never invented intertextuality. Intertextuality is a common thing, and it is. But I'm the only person who's linked this idea where you have the similarities of text in different media, books or whatever, narratives. I mean, there's quite a lot of intertextuality in Shakespeare. He draws from this source. But where you take that idea where the fabric of one case informs the fabric of another case, or where a criminal literally derives information that he uses from another case. And I believe Rex Heuermann may have done that with his blueprint. I believe Rex Heuermann was, to some extent, educated by the John Benet Ramsey case and by the some of the work of the profiler in the John Benet Ramsey case. I actually think he learned about John Douglas during the John Benet Ramsey case in 1996. And some of the first murders that we know from the Long Island serial killer are the late 90s. And so is there any, and I mean, that document he came up with, so what's the book? Mindhunter was written in 1995. Rex Heuermann compiled his blueprint, his document, in I think 2000 to 2002, very shortly after that book was written. How do you think he learned about that book? And he didn't only have one of his books in his library. He referred to there are two books. The Cases That Haunt Us, the police actually found in his home, and the other one he referred to page numbers and so on in his notes.
That questions about.
So definitely quite interesting. We also know that Barry Morphew, based on the spy pen of Suzanne Morphew, was actively listening to true crime stories, podcasts. I think like when he was driving to work and so on. I wonder how long this break is going to be, because I can't keep you guys amused for too much longer. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Auntie Ree says, this is what I think about Sebastian Rogers and the Summer Wells disappearance. That's interesting. Yeah, that is definitely quite interesting. Let's have a look. So, you might say, well, it's not really a big deal. You're saying that certain elements in one case you see in another case. That's not really a big deal. If you do that regularly and you start becoming proficient at that kind of pattern recognition, then you can take that into a brand new case. For example, the Jay Slater case. There's someone missing right now in Tenerife. And you can, based on what you profiled in the fabric of another case, you can say there's a very, very high probability that this is going to be the outcome. And someone will look at you and say, that's just your opinion. I mean, it could be something else. And obviously, you're talking about probability. There's always a chance that you could be wrong. But in terms of a profile, in terms of probability, there's a very good chance you could be right. And if it turns out you are right, people will say, well, you were just lucky or something. No, it's quite an advanced way of using what you know to profile what you don't know, and how much of the things that you're dealing with that you do know correspond to this case. And that actually can make you a really astute investigator. It's a kind of like Sherlock Holmes level of investigating that you don't really see very much. People know the idea, they just don't know how to apply it in a very systematic way. Like anyone can say, oh yeah, in that case, that's quite similar. But you're not doing it like regularly through all the regular use of these patterns. And I think that is what's kind of missing certainly in true crime conversations. Stephanie, thanks so much for that. So in the Baldwin case, you want to also think about intertextuality. So you want to think about what cases that happen, let's say on movie sets, led to convictions and whatever. And so there is a case where, and I think William Hurt was the actor, where this movie went and they filmed a scene on a railway track, kind of on a bridge, and I think they even put like a hospital bed where the railway track was, and lo and behold, in the middle of filming, a train came down the track, and they tried to get all the equipment off the track, and they were like running towards the train to get off the bridge, and one person actually died. And do you think someone was liable there? Like, who is really responsible for that? And guess what? It was, I think, a producer was one of the people responsible there. And there, can you say that the train killed the people? Or it's like saying the gunfire itself, did the train kill the people, or was someone reckless in allowing the situation to exist to begin with? And then you have another one, the Crow, the Crow movie. Actually, no one was held liable there. That was actually treated as a complete accident, a complete kind of, what's the word? A complete fluke, a complete sort of random thing. And no one was prosecuted. They finished the movie, and there was no sort of sense that this is your fault or you should have done that. And so when you combine these elements of, let's say, in a movie setting, what constitutes an accident and what constitutes foul play, you get a better sense of where this particular fabric fits in, using that whole intertextual technique. Does that make sense? Please, guys, get going. I don't really have nothing more to say. I'm looking forward to Carrie Morrissey resuming now. I'm not sure if she is going to. Let's see what you guys say. Lisa says the Crow was not an accident. Okay. Well, maybe you know more than I do about it. I did research it. TCRS, I'm a film school graduate and know people who worked in the Hurt film. Oh, okay. So can you remember who was liable? I think it was two people. I think it was was it the director and the producer, or as far as I know, there was like two people who got into trouble there. Can you remember? Laura says, I really liked William Hurt. He seemed to be very underrated. No, he was a great actor, but he was involved in that particular production. I mean, that's one thing that I did mention in my analysis. I'll see if I can find it. In my on my Alec Baldwin playlist, I do deal with that particular what do you call it? Those incidents and those scenarios. Let's see if I can find it for you guys. So basically, this is what I'm looking at. These are some of my playlists. Nicola Bully, Eliza Fletcher, Ido Student, Murder. Okay, there's the Baldwin incident. Correct. I don't know what the. At the moment, there are 116 videos that are related to that. And let's see where I dealt with that railway thing. See if I can find it. Can you guys see what I'm looking at? So there it is. Intertextualities. So I got to intertextualities. How far into this analysis did I deal with intertextualities? So that's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20, 21. So at 21 of the 116 episodes, we started looking at intertextualities, which is fairly early. And so we looked at The Crow. So if you guys want to watch that, I'll put a link in chat. Actually, I think I should put a link in the description as well. Maybe I'll get to that. So there's this one, and then also, so again, what legal outcome is likely? And so let's look at the outcome of The Crow. Then another one, this one here. It was simply impossible to imagine, and this is with this incident. And then there was also the one with Nicolas Cage, where Hannah worked with Nicolas Cage. That's also not quite intertextual, but basically something similar. And then I think I returned to this later on. There you can see I'm sort of re-referring to it. I don't know if I came back to it again later. There it is. There's the Crow aspect coming back into the analysis. I don't know if I did it more explicitly than that. Tragic moment, Baldwin is told she didn't make it.
I do have some very unfortunate news to tell you.
What?
She didn't make it. Yeah. So Joel's still at the hospital, but the other person involved didn't make it. Sorry. I just didn't want you to hear it outside of here. Is there something we could do for you? Is that Jonah in there? What? Jonah, the one back there? Yeah, okay. Would you want Jonah in here with you?
Yeah, so that was the moment. Okay, I wonder when this trial is going to resume. So have a look at some of your comments. That is a natural response. Chelsea, good to see you here. One thing I remember from his ABC News interview, he said, "I will never touch a firearm again. I'm done." And he was also saying something like, "I don't know if I'll ever make movies again." And then, sure enough, he finished this movie, and obviously it involved firearms. So, you know, I don't know if you guys remember that. In the ABC News thing, he said, "I will never touch a firearm again. And I don't know if I'm going to continue making movies." And then, well, he continued making this movie, which involved firearms. Yeah, I thought it looked like genuine shock as well. Yeah, well, I don't know if you can expect the average man to just burst out crying. Like, you know, men, I don't know if you could say that a man will just naturally start crying. So, you know, I've never said that Baldwin intentionally killed Helena. You know, never said that he wanted to shoot her, that he anything like that. The question is, was he negligent? Was he reckless? That's the question. And if he'd been less negligent, could she still be alive today? Well, I must say it's a weird feeling covering courtroom thing and having a YouTuber sitting behind the defendant. It's just, I don't know, kind of strange. Yeah, I mean that's fair. I must say this has been a horrible morning session. Like I'm really tired, and yeah, this has really been a horrible morning session. So dull and slow and plodding. It's already 10:20 a.m. Like what has actually happened so far this morning? There's Hilaria on his right hand side over here. Well, Yvonne, that's being decided here. That the jury will decide whether he intentionally pulled the trigger. The jury will decide that, and I think it's going to come down to the gun experts, how well the gun experts stand up to cross-examination, and the gun experts at the defense call. What I'd love to see is a gun expert show in court a gun firing itself. I'd love to see that. Well, like there's just so much sidebars, nothing seems to be happening. There we go. Thanks for that. Yeah, Midnight Rider was the movie where the person died on the train track. That's 100%. I just want to I'm going to have to do this, I think. I just want to get the link for this, and then we can go back. I'll put these links in the description. If you guys want to watch, if you guys want to look at what I said about intertextuality in terms of the Rust case and other movies where there were potential legal consequences. Mother of 7, I think. Um, 8 children, and then is Ireland the 9th? Oh yeah, and I think she was a surrogate. Someone else was a surrogate for one child, something like that, right? Nate says Midnight Rider was a biopic about Greg Allman, and I believe the shot they were trying to get was part of a nightmare dream sequence. So you literally had Alec, you had what's his name? I can't remember the name of the actor. We mentioned him a minute ago. I can see his face. William Hurt in a hospital bed, on like a train track on a bridge, and then like a real nightmare did happen. A train came down the track and it couldn't stop, and it actually hit part of the bed, and someone actually got run over by the train. They were actually running towards the train because they were on the close side, the near side of the bridge to get off the train. To get off the track was running towards the train. So they were running towards the train in order to get off the track and off the bridge. Pretty hectic. Pauline says Hilaria is quite attractive. Wild Dead Wolf, thank you. If someone gives you a car, you drive it. It's your responsibility to check it's safe. Well said. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to check like literally everything, but you should have a basic check, like when you're driving, do the brakes work? Do you have your safety belt on? Things like that. By the way, I actually took a thick piece of metal out of one of my tires. Like a thick piece of metal was actually on the inside of my tire. Just wondering how it got there. Anna, is it CAP? Thanks a lot for that. He seems to be in good spirits today. This is like going on forever. So one of the things I mentioned in a previous video was, what if Baldwin had testified in defense of Hannah? Basically said, Hannah's a good kid. Hannah made some mistakes. But Hannah, did this, and I was really impressed. Hannah gave me weapons training, and if anything, I could have paid a bit more attention and whatever. And what if that actually got the jury to that his influence, him backing her, what if that had actually got Hannah acquitted? Well, if Hannah got acquitted, his chance of being acquitted goes up as well, right? In the sense that if the fact that Hannah was convicted means that a jury saw that there is a crime that was committed, right? The flip side of it is if he testified in her defense and then the jury convicted her anyway, then everyone who's watching kind of goes, wow, So you tried to do that and it didn't work. So, do you know what I'm saying? And so it kind of made sense from a legal expedience perspective not to support her. But of course, now she may testify against him. Even if Hannah's decided she's not going to say anything, when she's actually on the stand with everybody watching, remember, she's quite a young person. When she's actually on the stand, she might feel like, you know what, I've actually got something I want to say. You know what, regarding that question, I think I actually do have something to say. I'm angry. So we'll see what happens. And all of this may happen tomorrow. So I guess we'll just see, won't we? I think she is appealing. She is appealing. She will be brought to testify. She can't be made to testify, but she will be coming in tomorrow. She may plead the fifth, right? Yeah, well, that's quite interesting. What if again? I think you. Looks like we're back. I think you do have to. You do have to say the person handing the firearm. Do they have any responsibility? Do you say that the person handling the firearm has no responsibility? Can you say that? If somebody gets killed when someone's handling a firearm, can you say you just don't need to even ask whether they have any responsibility? Well, that didn't last long. Yeah, there were 12 people in the church. Now, do you remember yesterday the people on set said there were only 6 people in the church? The people who spoke to law enforcement said there were only 6 people in the church. Time Flight says, I'm so torn on this case. I think as a producer, he has responsibility, but that's not what he's being judged on. I feel desperately sorry for Helena. Yeah, well said. So the outcome of this is actually huge. This is a criminal case. The outcome is really huge because following this, there will be civil lawsuits. I mean, they're already in the offing. But whatever the outcome will either give ammunition or undermine those civil cases. So it is the outcome here is actually quite important. He told ABC News that Hannah handed him the gun. There's been inconsistent statements regarding that. That definitely is inconsistent. So it would be good. Hannah, did you hand him the gun? And I don't think she said she handed him the gun. I think she said she gave it to Halls.
Switch over there. No, this is yours.
Maybe seated.
Still good morning. We are, okay. Good morning again. So I'm just going to, we're going to tech issue, or this is not there. Okay. We left off.
So he's not publishing it yet. I'm just telling him he's gonna publish it.
Right.
Well, you have to do permission.
Okay. So I'm now moving for admission for A3 and A11.
I think he needs to, I'm sorry, I think he needs to go ahead and lay the foundation.
I'm going for the foundation.
Yeah.
As you stated on direct, and we're just going to put up states 21. If I can publish that, it's in evidence.
So it's the defense case that's being led now. Oh, no, actually, it's the cross-examination by the defense. It's still the prosecution's case. Okay.
As you testified yesterday, you collected items from the church that you thought were relevant to this case, correct?
Yes.
And some of the things that you thought gave insight into what happened, correct?
Yes.
And including in those was a copy of the script and the shot list, correct?
I believe there was paperwork that was photographed, but I don't believe it was collected.
Okay, well, I'm going to pass up to the witness what is marked as A3 and A11. Do you recognize these?
Yes.
And what are those?
It appears to be scene paperwork.
That you collected.
Yes.
And those are fair and accurate photographs?
Yes.
Okay, offer them as evidence.
I don't believe that's an adequate foundation.
Wow.
What more do you want him to do?
But what we discussed at the bench, but I mean, obviously I defer to the court, but I'm relying on the conversation we had.
Well, all right, so they are conditionally admitted pursuant to the discussion up at the bench.
So I'm going to now publish A3. And can you read that last sentence?
Russ Colt cocked quietly now.
And I'm now going to publish 811. Let's see if this will allow me to zoom in focus. Can you read that, or does it not focus right?
I cannot read that.
Okay, I apologize.
I still can't read it.
I'm going to pass it up to the witness. If it's not, oh, it works like this, I guess. Oh, no, it doesn't.
There we go.
It's supposed to autofocus, so this is not my fault, just so it's you investigate. Okay, permission to approach.
Macro on hammer as thumb cocks it. And then line 6 is frontal slow push in on Rust, his hat down, motionless.
Thank you. And you found and photographed these documents in the church in the vicinity of where Ms. Hutchins fell, correct?
I believe the first photograph, the first paper was, I don't recall where the second paper was located.
And if we look at states 21, I'll have that up on the screen just for a moment. When you collected these documents, you thought they were important, correct?
When I photographed them, yes.
Sorry, I apologize. When you photographed them. And the reason you thought it was important is because you thought it reflected what would have happened in the scene, correct?
I understood that there was a mentioning of a firearm in the paperwork, which is why I thought it was important.
Right, because it's actually just because you thought to yourself at the time and that it actually described what he's doing, right?
I believe at the time, yes.
And you said to your fellow officers that you think it's important because it confirms Mr. Baldwin's statements, correct?
I don't recall stating that, but could be something that I've stated.
So you remember yesterday the defense was saying it's not a crime scene. You know, it's not a crime. It's not a crime scene. Well, a moment ago we saw this slide. Anyway, I can't quite get back to it, but you see all of those like crime scene markers, right?
And you indicated that you thought it was hers, meaning Ms. Hutchins' paperwork, correct?
I believe that one of those papers does have her name on it, which is why I thought it was hers.
Right. And the other paper that you already testified to, A3, was found around where she fell, correct?
Yes.
And it contains the shot list and the script for that day, correct?
I don't know
Objection,
exactly.
foundation, sorry.
So you have laid
Did
the
you-
foundation?
Yeah. Did you believe at the time that what you were looking at may have reflected things that were supposed to occur in the church?
Yes.
You also recovered Ms. Hutchins' cell phone, correct?
At a later date, I believe.
And that was sent to Byron French and the investigation division to extract the cell phone results eventually, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Now, you tried to find video recording in the church, correct?
Yes.
But the video cameras for the scene in question did not record that day, so you were not able to find that. Fair?
They recorded a portion of that day. There was a recording that was recovered.
And you didn't find any live ammunition in the church?
Yes, there was one live round located inside the church.
There was, okay. And where was that found?
That was in Mr. Baldwin's holster.
Right, so, right, the bandolier that we were talking about before?
Yes.
Okay. And you have no reason to think that Mr. Baldwin had any idea that was there, right?
Correct.
At that scene, and at this time in the investigation, Detective Kano was in charge, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
So while you're now then leaving the church, and we're going to move on, okay, you have to figure out how ammunition works on a movie set, right?
Yes.
That wasn't something that you were familiar with before the incident in question, right?
Correct.
And you sort of became the subject matter expert on that topic, right?
Yes, I'd say so.
Right. I mean, you were
For
called
the sheriff's
into,
office.
for the sheriff's office, right? But also you'd be called into meetings with Corporal Hancock and the prosecutors and try to educate them on those topics. Isn't that fair?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, you weren't running the case, were you?
No.
But you were there to assist not only with the evidence, but to be a specialist on this sort of unique topic. Fair?
Yes.
And again, you said this on direct, but I think it got a little confusing perhaps. But there are never supposed to be live ammunition on a movie set.
Could it get any worse? Today
Okay,
the
go ahead.
13th,
You've
no, it's
gone
the
over.
11th. Friday is the 12th, not quite the
Thank you.
13th.
You understood that there should never be live ammunition on a movie set, right?
Yes.
And the one type of ammunition that occurs on movie sets is blanks, and those are the ones that just go poof, right?
Correct.
Okay, and I'm just showing you 812 that's in evidence, right? And those have a crimped top, right?
Yes.
Okay, as opposed to dummy rounds, right? And I'm showing you 811 that's in evidence, right? Which look like real bullets, right?
Correct.
And there were different types of dummy rounds, as I think you said on direct. But you can't tell necessarily that a dummy round is a dummy round just by looking at it.
Not always, no.
Some dummy rounds have holes in them, right?
Yes.
Others have their primers removed.
Yes.
Some of them do not have holes in the side or their primers removed.
Correct.
Some of them don't make a noise when they're shaken, called Denex rounds.
Yes.
And some dummy rounds look exactly like live rounds, correct?
Yes.
And those look exactly like live ammunition, fair?
Yes.
And those type of exact replica dummy rounds were on the set of Rust, right?
Yes.
So somebody was saying that the prosecution are disrupting the defense, but actually what's happening is the defense is disrupting the prosecution, and the prosecution want to disrupt the defense as well. There's definitely not a lot of love lost between these opposing counsels. It's a legal war going on in the background.
And those were Seth Kenny's dummy rounds, right?
Yes.
And in terms of identifying dummy rounds by shaking them, right, which is something you talked about on direct, some of them are louder than others, right?
Yes.
Some of them have 1 BB or 2 BBs in them or 3 BBs in them, right?
Yes.
Sometimes if you shake a bullet, you can hear the powder, or because of oxidation, you can hear things inside of a bullet when you shake it, right?
Yes.
And depending on the setting of something would impact the person's ability to hear it. Isn't that fair?
Yes.
So, right, if I shook a dummy round right now in a courtroom in front of a microphone, right, it would probably be, you would be able to hear it. Would you agree?
Yes.
But if people are all moving around in a movie set, you don't know that everybody would be able to hear it. Isn't that fair?
Not everyone, no.
And some dummy rounds don't shake at all. Isn't that also true?
Yes.
The only way to determine definitively is to send them to the FBI and to take apart the dummy round to figure out what the powder is inside of it, right?
The powder inside of a dummy round?
Yeah,
Or the ball bearings?
Well, the ball bearings versus the powder that could be in a live ammunition.
Yes,
right?
that would be the comparison, yes.
And so one of the questions that I'm going to ask you is there different grades of gunpowder used in blanks versus live rounds?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay. And so as you proceed in this case, you are then executing the prop truck search at the scene of Rust, right?
Yes.
So about a week after the incident, approximately, you go back to the setting of Rust and you execute a search warrant on the truck that housed the prop cart that you found the shell casing on, right?
Yes.
And when you went to do that search warrant, it was light outside, right?
Correct.
And you were with your fellow officers, Hancock, Kano, Sergeant Zook was there, correct?
Yes.
And you had a good working relationship with all of these people, right?
Yes.
And Detective Hancock and Kano, signed off on what you collected as detectives involved in this, right?
Yes.
And Sergeant Zook, who was their supervisor, signed off as well. Fair?
Yes.
And there was a witness there that day that assisted law enforcement with the search of the prop truck, right?
Yes.
Did you notice he never actually asked her a question? In other words, can you tell me what happened? It's all, I'll tell you what happened, you tell me if I'm right. It's quite a fucked up way, if you ask me, of dealing with a witness. I mean, if you want to totally control the narrative, then I guess well done. But isn't the point of a courtroom to find out what happened from the witnesses there, not impose your narrative onto them? Why do you need to control the narrative so tightly? Like, why can't you let someone just tell you what they think? Why do you need to impose your story on them in such a strict way? Because that's exactly what's happening here. I'm only going to let you answer yes, no, correct. That's all. You're not going to get to say anything else.
A man named Seth Kenny.
Correct.
And not only did he assist, he actually was the one that opened the safe, right?
Right?
Yes, he had the combination too.
Well, do you know how he got the combination?
He was the owner of the safe.
You sure about that?
That was my understanding.
You collected dozens of guns from the safe, right?
Right?
Yes.
And you understood that there were a dozen plus actors, extras, stuntmen that used firearms on the set of Rust.
Right?
Yes.
Just like we talked about with Mr. Ackles and his bandolier, right?
Right?
A lot of these actors may have at one point or another, unbeknownst to them, God forbid, had live ammunition on them,
Right?
right?
Yes.
And the prop truck, we can look at A13.
I'm going to tell you what I think, right? Yes. And then I'm going to tell you what I think about this, right? Yes.
Was a little disorganized. I don't know if it's quite at the level of the cart, but it was a little disorganized, right?
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll just show A14 for completeness.
So again, what's happening is the defense are totally usurping the prosecution. They're basically taking over the case. I think I remember the same thing with Karen Reed as well. So you don't need to actually present a defense. You just cross-examine until kingdom come.
And inside the prop truck, there were boxes, right?
Yes.
Boxes of ammunition.
Correct.
And these boxes are sort of, a lot of them are the same shape, make, model, white box, right?
Right?
Yes.
And I'm just going to show you 816, which is a close-up. And do you notice one box that looks a little different than the other boxes?
Yes, there is.
And which box is that?
The box in the center, instead of it being stamped, it has handwritten in blue marker, dummy rounds 45 LC.
Right, and I'll just blow up that, which is in State's Exhibit 19, right?
Yes.
And you don't know who wrote that writing on it, do you?
Seth Kenny.
And if we could look at A22, can you tell us what that is?
Out of context, no, I can't.
Okay, well then we're going to look at A23.
Can you move it up? Thank you.
Sure.
This is the rounds that were inside of that box with the styrofoam insert that were removed.
Okay, and you see that they are star-line brass, nickel, dummy rounds, right?
Yes.
And again, the difference between a star-line brass nickel-plated dummy round and a live round is effectively that one has powder inside and the other does not, right?
Yes.
And do you know where all the ones in this box went, the ones that are missing?
I do not.
So we're in the prop truck and you have star-line brass, you have nickel primer, but they're not live, right?
Correct.
And you don't know when that box ended up getting to the prop truck, moved to the prop truck. You don't know any of that background, right?
Right.
You don't know if somebody placed that box with the handwriting on it into that Mary Kay bag, do you?
No.
And on the prop truck that housed all the ammunition, was there any live ammunition on the prop truck?
No.
So I want to ask you something, Investigator Popple. Did that surprise you?
No, not necessarily.
Well, you've got all this, you're finding these live rounds all
Why
over.
didn't he say that surprised you, right? Why didn't he say that? I mean, he's trying, right? So I do think that he's trying to make the whole conspiracy thing that I think how these live, so someone's trying to frame Alec Baldwin. That seems to be what he's angling at. That's what I'm getting from this, right?
Set, right?
Yes.
Sort of seemed to be a little bit of everywhere without much cohesion between where you're finding them, right?
Yes.
And they're housed originally in the prop truck, right?
Yes.
And so you go a week later to the prop truck, which has all the ammunition, right?
Yes.
And there's not a single live round there, right?
Correct.
Why did law enforcement wait a week to go to the prop truck?
The search warrant needed to be written. I'm not sure of why the time difference occurred.
Someone needs to count the number of rights.
Well, I mean, the search warrant for the church that we talked about on the 21st, you guys were able to do in one day, right? The same day that the incident happened, you did the search warrant on the church, right?
We did it the next day.
Well, you got the warrant on the 21st, you did it the 22nd. Is
Correct.
that fair?
Yes.
I apologize. So if you could do a search warrant in one day for one thing, why does it take 7 days to do a search warrant for something else?
I do not know the circumstances of why there was that time frame.
And so on direct examination, you pointed out that, and this is States 30. You said that these were the Seth Kenny dummies in the box, right?
Yes.
And you talked about that a bit on direct examination, right?
Correct.
And I think you were making a point that Seth Kenny's dummies look a little bit different than the live ammunition found on set. So perhaps there was a way to distinguish them. Was that the import of your testimony?
Yes.
But if you look at the picture of the Seth Kenny box as it's being opened, right? How many rounds are in there?
So there are 17.
So then how do you explain why there's more rounds in your picture of those dummies taken out of the box?
If I can refer to my report to refresh my memory.
It's fine with me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello from South Gardner, Maine. Good to see you.
Are you able to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Do you have an explanation for that?
Yes. So I apologize. The photo that was just up of the 22 rounds were actually removed from a bandolier that was located inside of the prop truck.
Defense A26, right?
Yes.
And it has the exact number as the picture you showed the jury, right?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, the real picture of the ammunition that comes out of Seth Kenny's box is this one, A27, right?
Yes.
And I saw you counting.
I just wanted to make sure the number of rounds.
Fair enough. No. I think that's a good way to. That's how I figured it out. That's the right one, though, right?
Yes.
And
So did you see what he tried to do? He tried to trick her by he's saying blah 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 blah, right? Blah 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 blah, right? Blah 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 blah, right? Blah 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 blah, right? Then he says, "This is the exhibit from when you took out the rounds, right?" Then she's supposed to say, "Right." Then he says, "No, it's not. It's not the right one. It's actually this one." So in other words, can you see what it is? It's a kind of mind fuckery. It's a kind of thing where and she didn't catch him out here because he didn't catch her out here because she basically said, no, that's the right exhibit, wrong, not right, wrong. It's the wrong exhibit. She caught him out trying to trick him, right? So I must say, I find that a really cheap shot, and I find it. Let me just play this.
The best you can do! That's the best you can do!
That's kind of like what I want to say. Is that the best you can do?
There's something important about this picture, isn't there?
Yes.
Doesn't that Seth Kenny round look exactly like the live round?
Under a camera flash, I suppose it could.
Well, I don't know about suppose it could. I mean, we'll look
So
at.
do you notice when he doesn't ask a right question and she doesn't give him the right answer, then I don't know about that. I'm going to kind of argue with the witness. That's why it's right. And then if she's allowed to answer what she thinks, well, then I'm going to disagree with you.
Look at the showcasing, Exhibit 28. And we'll go back. 827. We can go back. States 28. Don't you think they look an awful lot alike?
They look similar, yes, but I can still see differences.
Well, I mean, you're a trained investigator, right?
I'm trained crime scene tech, yes.
Even more than an investigator or crime scene tech, right?
Correct.
You have your Nikon 700 flash and your camera, right?
Yes.
You have the opportunity to take this ammunition back to the precinct, lay it out, and photograph it, right?
Yes.
You have no reason to think anybody on the set of Rust was able to do that, do you?
No.
You turned in your report. In this investigation, Hancock signed off on it, correct?
My supervisor signed off on my report.
Sergeant Zuck?
So I must say, if I watch this again, I would want to look at Baldwin's face when this whole thing goes down about this exhibit and where she isn't caught out. I'd be interested just to see Baldwin's expression. Like, did he know that his lawyer is going to do this?
At the time, yes.
So we're still on the topic of the ammunition, and you and law enforcement were trying to figure out the source of the live ammunition, correct?
Yes.
In fact, it was incumbent upon you to try to find the source, because if there were people sending live ammunition to movie sets, that would be very dangerous condition, wouldn't it be?
Yes.
And as you were going about your search, Seth Kenny actually walked into the precinct one day and gave you ammunition, right?
Yes.
Okay, you remember that, right?
I do.
That was. Did you think Mr. Kenny was being helpful?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, were you suspicious at all of that?
That was not my place to be suspicious of him. I hadn't had much interaction with him.
Yeah, I mean, it may not have been your place to, but I'm just asking you if after this point, Seth Kenny, comes knocking on the precinct and shows you all some rounds, whether or not that
Asked and answered.
I don't believe it was.
Overruled.
I'm just asking whether it's your place to be or not. I'm just asking when the man showed up and just presented ammunition to the precinct, did that make you suspicious at all?
No.
Well, let me ask you this. I bet it didn't surprise you that he didn't turn in the exact matching lethal ammunition, did it?
No, I wasn't surprised by that.
Okay. And so what he turned in, and I know you have your report there if you need to refresh, but he walks into the precinct, and this is Seth Kenny. Right. And he gives you two different types of shell casings or ammunition, right? He gives you Starline brass, he gives you spent shell casings, right?
Yes.
And those were Starline brass, nickel primer, but they weren't live, right? They had been shot and they were spent shell casings, right?
If I can refer to my report to refresh. I don't recall if any of them were Starline brass.
If you turn to the last page,
Is there a specific item number that you're referring to?
Item,
So, I mean, this entire morning session has been defense cross-examination. I mean, why don't you present your case when you want to present your case? You know, that's how it works. First, the prosecution goes, then the defense.
set, I think 215. You're going to be better at determining these reports than me.
Yes.
Okay. And he brought you, again, he also gave you live ammunition with nickel
See you,
primers
Robbie.
with big
Thanks for
bursts
joining
on
us.
live brass, right?
Yes.
Okay. So he just seems to have, he just missed sort of on what you were looking for, right?
Yes.
Because you were,
Yeah, objection to the
Awesome.
former question. She doesn't know what Seth Kinney's motives are.
No, I don't, I don't
What he's,
overruled.
I mean, you know that if Seth Kenney provided the live ammunition to the set, that's worse for Seth Kenney, right?
It's worse for whoever provided it. Yes.
I agree. So, but as members of law enforcement, you all know that the person who provided that would have a motive to not be found, true?
Yes.
So you headed to execute a search warrant at Seth Kenney's prop house, right?
Yes.
And a judge signed off on that search warrant, correct?
Yes.
Because you had probable cause to believe that there was live.
So someone was saying, I honestly don't understand why the defense is doing across this long. Well, it's quite simple. Distraction. So the defense don't need to prove anything. They just need to distract, undermine, raise doubt, confuse. That's really the job of the defense, and he's doing a really great job. Just take you down all sorts of rabbit holes. Could it be a conspiracy? Could it be Seth Kenney? Could it be Dave Halls? I mean, he can really make this a very, very long trial where we talk endlessly about Sarah Zachary, where we talk endlessly. And in other words, you never talk about your client. You never actually talk about what did happen. You talk about what could have happened and what these other individuals, their role was. And that to me is the nasty side of this sort of thing. It's a game, and the judge seems to be, I don't know. Couldn't the judge like if this was the Draconis trial? I can't imagine that the judge wouldn't say, "Get on with it," or how much longer is the cross-examination going to be, or something like that. But you don't just sit there passively and let it go on and on and on. I mean, maybe she should be cross-examined for the next week. At what point does the judge say, this is not right?
Ammunition that matched the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins, right?
Yes.
And this was you, and again, Detective Hancock and Sergeant Zook, right?
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, how come you executed the search warrant at night?
I don't recall.
And I wanted to ask you, how come Detective Kano waits outside?
I don't believe that Detective Kano was there the entirety of the search warrant.
So, well, while he was there, do you know why? Do you have any information as to why he didn't come inside?
I do not.
Before you went on the search, you discussed it with Detective Hancock, correct?
Yes.
And just like the truck we talked about, you all had done nothing to secure this prop house while before you got the search warrant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And tell the jury, how long did you wait to execute the search warrant at the prop house? I
don't recall.
Well, on direct examination, you knew the dates right away. Don't you remember? You nailed it.
Oh,
10/27, November 30th. Right?
I apologize. I thought you were asking from when it was written to when it was executed.
Oh, no, I apologize. Yes.
We executed the search warrant on November 30th.
Okay, so that was a month and a week, at least, right, after the incident in question.
Yes.
Okay. And just like the truck, you're executing a search warrant, and who was there to help you?
Seth Kenny.
And your purpose was to find the matching ammunition, correct?
Our purpose was to locate any .45 caliber live ammunition.
Well, sure, but the ultimate investigation that you all were conducting was to try to solve the open question.
Maybe the judge
of how
doesn't
a
want
lethal round got on a movie
this
set,
case
right?
appealed.
Yes.
And you talked a little bit about this when we talked about the prop cart, how the disorganization of it could lead to commingling, right?
Yes.
How was the organization of the prop house?
Some things were organized and some were not.
Well, if you could give us a sense, did you find it to be more organized than the cart or less organized than the cart?
I would say they're probably about equal.
Is Baldwin
and
hiding
you knew,
behind this
did you
lady
not,
over here?
that a dummy round can be turned into a live round, and a live round can be turned into a dummy round, correct?
Yes.
So a person with spent shell casings or dummies, they could reuse them, correct?
Yes.
That would be economically efficient, right?
Yes.
And you knew as you enter this search that some of the ammunition on the set of Rust definitely came from Seth Kenny, right?
Yes.
He admitted that, right?
Correct.
There were invoices he didn't have much of a choice, correct?
Yes.
And you were also looking for tools that could be used to manufacture dummies and live ammunition, correct?
Yes.
And you were also looking for a green ammo can, correct?
Yes.
You know, the white boxes that we keep looking at are...
So look at the gallery. Look at people looking down, just like not really, people aren't really engaged. That's exactly what he really wants from the jury. He doesn't want the jury looking at the prosecution, getting the original narrative, like getting the... And this is the benefit that Baldwin's attorneys have, is they've seen how the prosecutors presented their case with Hannah. And so they've taken notes, like, how can we disrupt this? How can we interfere with that strong narrative that comes out in the beginning? How can we, and that's exactly what's happening. And look how the people in the gallery have already just lost attention. It's losing my attention. Like, I'm like, when can I, like, I'm really not interested in this at all. Well done. Well done. I mean, that's one way to confuse the jury, is just have them lose interest. Talk endlessly about rounds.
They look like each other, right?
Correct.
A green ammo can is a more unique item, fair?
Yes.
So why don't you tell the jury why you were looking for a green ammo can?
I don't recall specifically, other than at some point in time it had housed live rounds.
And law enforcement had that information at the time of going to a judge to get the search warrant, and very much at the time that they were executing the warrant, right?
Yes.
And I don't want to belabor the white box conversation too much, but other than, I'm going to find it too, on the white boxes that you found at the set, and at the white boxes that you saw a lot of at Seth Kenny's, there were these initials in the middle of the white box that said JS. Right? I'll just show you A2. Yeah. Right, that you found at the scene, correct?
Yes.
And if we look inside of Seth Kenny's prop house, A18, you see very similar font and signage, correct?
Yes.
And as you continue on in your search, you understood Seth Kenny was a person of interest, correct?
Yes.
And this was an important moment in the case, correct?
Yes.
And you even found out that the day before Seth Kenny provided the dummies to Rust, he had in his possession live Starline brass nickel primer from 1883, correct?
I don't recall it being the day before, having that information personally.
Well, so let's leave the day before right now. You knew and understood that Seth Kenny had recently been in possession of Starline brass nickel primer live, correct?
I don't know that it was that specific, just that he was in possession of live ammunition in a recent point.
Now, when you testified on direct examination, you told the jury about how you found some live ammo at the prop house, right?
Yes.
And how you took that live ammo and sent it to the FBI, right?
Yes.
And you sent the live ammo from the set of Rust to the FBI, right?
Yes.
And you're not an FBI agent, but what you told the jury was that when you compared the powder from the set of Rust's ammunition to Seth Kenny's live ammunition, they didn't look the same, right?
Correct.
And you testified previously. Well, let me just ask you. Did you take all of the 45 live ammunition from PDQ into evidence?
Yes.
And did you search every single box inside of Seth Kenny's prop house?
Yes.
And because you did that, according, is this still, what is that? Did I do something? No. Oh, it just goes to sleep. Talking too much. And because you've told this jury now that you found every 45.
This is an interesting side comment he made. You hear what he said? It just goes to sleep. I'm talking too much. That's not part of his argument, right? And so that's something he's saying casually. And I can't help wondering whether that is what he wants, to talk a lot and basically put people to sleep, to basically think about what's going on. He's sucking up the concentration, the attention span of the jury. A very good time to get the jury on your side is on the opening statement and the very first day and 2 days of the prosecution's case. And so he's taking that initiative out their hands. He's basically squandering all of I know when I write a book, I need to make the beginning, the opening chapter, the first, the introduction and the first paragraphs of the first chapter. I need to nail that in order to make the most of the the fresh attention span of the reader, right? And if you want to have someone not read the rest of your book, you start off in a very generic way, and it's not really doesn't really go anywhere. That's exactly what he's doing. He's squandering the attention span of the jury by usurping the role of the prosecution.
Live ammo there, correct?
Yes.
And that you searched every single box, correct?
Yes.
What you're telling this jury is they can be sure that if there was a live round on there that matched the set of Rust, you would have found it, right?
Yes.
Let's take a look at A19. Is that one of the rooms inside of the prop house?
Yes.
You see those boxes packed all the way to the ceiling?
Yes.
Did you all have a ladder or anything when you guys were searching?
No.
Okay. So can we agree that you didn't search the boxes at the top?
I believe they were taken down or at least looked into. It was not just myself searching.
Right, well, we talked about it. It was Kana was outside. It was you and Hancock and Zook, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, tell the jury. Did you or did you not search every single one of those boxes?
We searched the entirety of the property. Yes.
Well, what do you mean when you say that you searched the entirety of the property?
I mean, if a box is opened and it is clear that there's no ammunition in it, meaning if I open a box and it's all clothing and I look at the bottom of the box and it's all clothing, then we're not going to dump the box out on the floor and continue to shake it until rounds that aren't in there fall out.
But okay, sure. Were there any boxes like that?
There were a multitude of boxes.
Got it. So, are you telling this jury that you're on your oath that you searched every single box in this room? That's just all I want to know.
Not me personally. Our team reasonably searched the warehouse.
Okay, and I think we're getting closer to, when you say reasonably searched, what do you mean by that?
I mean, how would you approach searching this kind of area?
Well,
So now the crime scene has become Seth Kenny's thing. It's not the inside of the church. Now we want to focus on, and this isn't even on the set. This isn't even on the set.
Tell you that law enforcement, I know from the movies. Okay. I'll move on.
Wow, the judge actually said to him, move on. And did you see what he did? He was like laughing and was saying, I know from the movies. It's like, okay, maybe we should talk about movies and what we see in the movies. This is, I don't know what the time is in New Mexico right now, but he's basically used up the entire morning session. And this is the first time that the judge has actually said anything. Basically, move on. Maybe she needs to say that a little bit more.
Well, why don't you tell me, what's a grid search?
A grid search is usually...
Can you tell me what a grid search is? Is he cross-examining her on what she'd said earlier about what a grid search is? Like, is this cross-examining something she said? Is it? I mean, did she testify the whole of yesterday afternoon?
Conducted outside, where you would reasonably set up in a way that you could grid an area and then search each section on that grid.
Okay, and well, why don't you tell me, what would have been, if you wanted to be certain, the best way to search this room if you had unlimited resources and time?
I believe that when we searched this room, we divided the room in order for it to be searched.
Divided it how?
Meaning myself took one section, Sergeant Zook took another section.
So I've got a question. So in the cross-examination, he was interrupted about 4 times by the prosecutor. In the defense opening statement, he was interrupted about 3-4 times by the prosecution, basically objecting to what he was doing. And do you think that he's going to continue cross-examining basically until the judge actually tells him to stop? In other words, he is going to run that clock as far as he possibly can. Just keep going, and basically until the judge tells him that's enough. And by then, how much time has run down? I'm just asking, do you think that is what he's doing? Because so far he's already shown that he's going up to a line and then he seems to cross it and then he comes back. Do you think that's what he's doing? Do you think that he's going to continue with what he's doing until the judge actually says that's enough? What do you think?
Detective Hancock took another section.
Are you certain of that, or are you best estimate that that's what your memory tells you?
I do not recall exactly how the room was searched.
Okay, and then let's say you open up a box with ammunition. How would you search an individual box?
It would depend on the box.
So tell me.
If we open a box and it's all 38s, we're not looking for 38s at that time, we're looking for 45s.
Okay. And so if you opened up a box and it was...
Don't you get the impression he's trying to manufacture narrative? He's trying to, he's talking about boxes. How would you do this? How would you do that? And he's just trying to run down the clock. Don't you get that idea?
Commingled rounds, how would you do it?
We would have to go through those rounds individually.
Right, and there were boxes like that here, right?
There were a few, yes.
Okay. And how many rooms were there inside of this location that had lots of boxes in them?
There was the back room that we see here. There was a front room that didn't have many boxes, and then a side room that had nicely organized boxes.
And what about the bathroom? Weren't there boxes and ammunition in the bathroom?
There were boxes in the bathroom, yes.
So 4 rooms, right?
Yes.
3 of you, 4 rooms, right?
Yes.
820. What are we looking at here, Investigator Copple?
This was a table that was located in the side room.
Okay. And what do you notice? I don't know why that arrow's there. What do you notice on this? It's probably because of me. What do you notice on this table of, here, thank you, sir. What's on this table? What is this?
There were plastic bags, tools, cleaning products, tape.
Okay. And as we talked about before, the search warrant told you to look for tools, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Detective Hancock spent some time in this room during the search, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And do you know what all these tools are? Are you familiarity with these tools?
I'm not, no.
Okay. You don't know what they can be done.
So another question that could come up is, so the Rust production chose this supplier that's got this messy thing going on. The Rust production, that's their standard. That's kind of who they chose to be their supplier. You can say whatever you want about Seth Kenny and about Prop and Arms, but what does that say about the people that are using the supplier? And also, Seth Kenny recommended Hannah to Rust, right?
You don't know how they can be used with either firearms or ammunition, do you?
No.
Okay. So tell the members of the jury which of these tools you seized.
We did not take any tools from the warehouse.
So you see what he's doing is kind of moving the crime scene to the prop truck, the Seth Kenny's thing. The crime scene is actually in the church. That's really what you want to be talking about. Then you can also talk about where did the live rounds come from. But he's basically moving the whole narrative somewhere else. And the whole thing is distraction.
When you were searching this area, did you have a schematic or a floor plan?
No, I don't believe so.
Did you go one room at a time or did you split up?
I don't recall.
Was there a predetermined plan of how to search this and to confirm that there were no further live bullets?
The predetermined plan was that I went in myself first and did overall photographs of everything in place, and then we conducted the search.
Did you do those letters like we saw in the prop truck so you could keep track of everything? Remember when we were looking in the church that there were those letters up so that you could sort of keep track and make sure you got everything? Did you use those letters?
No, I did not.
And of course, Seth Kenny was there and being helpful again, right?
Yes.
He told you that there were no 45 long Colts there and offered to show you the dummy rounds at one point. Do you remember that?
I don't recall that.
Do you remember him saying, I bet you $1,000 there's no 45 long Colts in there?
I do recall that, yes.
Okay. And did he win the bet?
He did not.
He lost the bet. So he tells you that, and law enforcement continues, and you look in the bathroom, and you found them, right?
Yes.
Let me ask you something. At any point, did you become suspicious of Seth Kenny?
No.
He's already asked her that.
A21. You were able to find this container that says live ammo on it, right?
Yes.
And that was helpful to whoever wrote that to show you where the live ammo was, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's one of the reasons you looked in that bin. Somebody labeled it live, right?
Well, we were looking in all of those bins, yes.
Every single...
I believe there was camera equipment stacked on top of it.
Right, and?
And when they're opened and you see that it's camera equipment, we close it back up and went to the box on the bottom that stated there was live ammo in it.
Doesn't this handwriting and label look kind of like that dummy round label we saw on the box that had that round you and I looked at? States 19.
Yes, it is similar, yes.
And that box that had the live rounds in it, there were a couple things that you found at PDQ. This handwriting is getting worse.
Yeah, no, he was a prosecutor.
Right.
It feels like he still wants to be a prosecutor.
PDQ you found, and that's the prop house. That's the name of the prop house, right?
Yes.
Okay. You found, bless you, Starline Brass Live, no nickel, and you found Starline, you found nickel primer lives, no Starline Brass, right?
Correct.
Every time you were with Seth Kenny, you got close to finding something that matched the scene, Starline Brass, nickel primer live, but it was always one off, wasn't it?
Yes.
And as you continued on your search, you found the green ammo can, right?
Yes.
And again, it was helpfully labeled, right?
Yes, I believe it was behind that box. I think you weren't able to obviously see it.
I see. But it also had a helpful label on it, didn't it?
Yes.
It said empty, right?
Yes.
And it looks a lot like the handwriting in States 19 and the helpful handwriting at A21 that says live, right?
Yes.
And it was taking a long time to go through those boxes, wasn't it?
Yes.
And Detective Hancock was wearing her lapel camera, right?
I believe so, yes.
Have you reviewed that camera?
I have not.
You remember you and you said to Detective Hancock, you know, this is taking a long time. We really need to spot that.
Objection relevance?
What's relevant? What's
The
relevant?
relevance
Does it
is
have
that
any
it's-
more tendency to?
Sure.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. Did you and Detective Hancock start joking around that it was going to take too long to search every box?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny it?
No.
And there were times.
Quite incredible. At last, the judge has sustained an objection. Quite incredible.
In this search where you pick up a box and you just shake the whole box, right?
I don't recall that.
Can we play that video?
I'm confused, is he refreshing or is he impeaching?
It doesn't matter. It's just a video. It's not a statement.
No, it does matter because she said she doesn't recall.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you deny you in parts of your search just picking up a box and shaking it to see if it shook or not? Do you deny that?
No.
So quite an interesting point that Carrie raised there. Are you refreshing or are you impeaching? And he was really doing neither, just wasting more of the court's time. Faticus, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. You definitely made this session worth it for me, more worth it for me. Thanks.
And so, but if you shook an entire box to see if it had a rattle in it, you wouldn't be able to be sure whether or not every single live round, it was all live rounds or a commingled group, correct?
Correct.
In fact, that's the entire basis of the case of what you believe the armorer to have done. Commingled, live, and dummies, right?
Yes.
And yet at the search being conducted to find the source of the lethal round, law enforcement is doing the very same thing that you're complaining about the armorer doing on the set. right?
Yes.
And when you left that search, you are not, as you sit here, sure you got every live round, are you?
No.
And actually, if you look at the boxes inside of that location, you didn't even search half of them. Did you?
I don't recall.
So then why on direct examination, if you do not recall, did the prosecutor ask you and you tell this jury that you were confirming that you searched and found every single live round? Why did you testify to that?
I found what I believe to be all the live rounds at the warehouse.
But that's not what you said. What you said was that you found.
So what may also be quite a clever strategy, and I must say time was used quite cleverly in the Oscar Pistorius case. What might be quite a clever strategy here is if he stops something like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes before the lunch break, and then you kind of, when the prosecution now wants to get going, the jury are like, we want to go on lunch. And so you kind of get the sense of the prosecution are like chomping at the bit. They want to continue with their case. But you can imagine the jury kind of going, of the prosecution now going to, how long is this going to take? Because he's just used up all of their attention, right? So that would be quite clever if he stops something like with 10 or 20 minutes to go before the lunch break. That's the lunch break itself is also going to interrupt by default the prosecution's whatever they manage to get going. So it's all these little things that are clever little ploys that can really influence a case, unfortunately.
Every live round, right?
I don't recall the exact words that I stated.
Well, you certainly said that you searched every single box just 10 minutes ago in front of this jury, right?
I believe that a reasonable search was conducted of the warehouse.
An investigator, I understand you were prepped before you testified today, correct?
I spoke with the prosecution before I testified yesterday.
Okay.
I think it's about 23 minutes to the lunch break right now, and I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, we'll see.
And the jury heard something about pre-trial interviews, where you're interviewed and the defense can be there to watch you be interviewed, right?
Yes.
But every time you talk to the prosecutors, defense is not there, correct?
Correct.
In fact, the vast majority of times you speak to the prosecutors, the defense is not there, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you and I had never met before today, or yesterday, I guess, correct?
Yes.
I think he is winding down.
You just said, when you originally said that you searched every box, okay, that itself is not accurate, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So now what you're saying is that you did a reasonable search, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing that the search warrant asked you to take was the cameras and the camera equipment, the surveillance footage from PDQ, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay, I'm going to pass up the warrant to refresh your recollection. Well, do you recall that there was camera equipment there?
There was lots of camera equipment inside of the warehouse.
In fact, you remember Seth Kenny showed you the camera equipment, right?
I don't recall exactly.
Okay, I'm just going to mark this as defense Z and just approach just quickly.
I'm sorry, is that a still frame? Oh, yeah, sure.
Are you going to mark that? Well, she's going to identify it and then you're going to.
I'm just going to see the refresh.
Okay.
Does that refresh your recollection about
No, it doesn't.
Take it back. And I'm going to pass you the warrant and ask you, this is DX23, if this refreshes your recollection of if you were supposed to.
X23?
Yes.
What?
Yes, Your Honor, DX23. Oh.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I need to know.
No, we need to refresh.
It's just to refresh. I can make it DX
So,
any number.
but why are we marking it?
Yeah, why are we marking it?
Then I will mark it.
Yes.
Unmarked.
Yes.
Okay, not seeking to introduce this. I'm just simply asking, does this refresh your recollection that the warrant commanded you to take the video footage? Number 6.
She can refresh her memory without being directed.
Of surveillance footage, yes.
Okay. And so, can you tell the jury, did you take the surveillance footage?
No.
So I don't know if you saw there, she kind of gulped a little bit there. I think she's feeling a little done in, but this is where the skill of a ex-prosecutor comes in. He's got a lot of experience and knowledge of what some of the protocols are and where to find them, right? She definitely is a little flustered here.
You didn't take the surveillance footage, even though that footage could have shown when people came and left the prop house, correct?
I don't recall if there was surveillance footage.
And the photograph of Mr. Kenny showing the surveillance footage didn't refresh your memory?
No, because I'm standing in the foreground of that photo.
Okay, well, tell the members of the jury what you did to search for surveillance videos that satisfied you that you would comply with the warrant's order. Tell the jury.
I don't recall looking for surveillance footage.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Because you didn't, right?
I don't recall.
But if you did.
So do you think the judge and the court are intimidated by these Harvard-educated, New York-based, top-dollar lawyers? Did you think like the court's actually like, it's like a dog with its tail between the legs? I mean, you can say we don't want coffee cups in the overflow room, but actually managing the court, do you think they're intimidated?
It would be on the lapel cameras of Detective Hancock and Sergeant Zook, right?
Yes.
And so if it's not on the lapel cameras of Detective Hancock and Sergeant Zook, you would agree with me it didn't happen, right?
Not precisely. They don't follow me around the entire time, and I don't wear a lapel, so it could have not been captured.
But you're not telling this jury that you
Thanks,
looked for it, right?
Christine.
I'm saying that I don't recall looking for it.
And if you had taken that footage, if any there were, right, you agree with me that it would have shown when people were coming and going from the prop house, potentially, correct?
That's a possibility, yes.
It's a possibility you could have seen when the ammo can got there, right?
Possibly, yes.
You could have seen Sarah Zachary picking up the ammunition, correct?
Possibly, yes.
You could have seen Seth Kenny disposing of ammunition in the 40 days between when the incident happened and when you arrived, correct?
Possibly, yes.
And there's one other thing that it would have shown, isn't there?
I don't know.
Well, it would have shown whether or not you all really searched the place, wouldn't it?
Possibly, yes.
And so you didn't take it. You did not voucher any of the surveillance footage.
I do not recall looking for the surveillance footage.
Well, again, I know that answer, but you know what you vouchered in this case, correct?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
You didn't take into your custody and add to the evidence any surveillance footage, correct?
No.
And you never spoke to any witnesses, you yourself, about what you found at PDQ later, did you?
No.
And you testified on direct examination that you did collect DNA, phones, prints, things like that in this case, right?
Yes.
And you got the armorer, the first assistant director, Dave Hall's, Sarah Zachary, and Alec Baldwin's phones, right?
I did not. I don't believe so.
You ultimately vouchered?
I would have to refer to my report. I don't believe I collected all of those things.
Okay. What about DNA extractions?
I did collect DNA swabs from certain individuals, yes.
Okay. Including Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, Dave Halls, Sarah Zachary, Alec Baldwin?
Not Alec Baldwin, but the rest.
Okay. And what about prints? Fingerprints?
Yes,
Okay. From Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, Dave Halls, Sarah Zachary?
yes.
Okay. Did you take the cell phone of Seth Kennedy?
I don't believe so, no.
Did you take the prints of Seth Kennedy?
No,
Did you take the DNA of Seth Kennedy?
no.
Everything that you did take into your custody, in law enforcement's custody in this case, is in your supplemental report. Is that fair?
Yes,
And most importantly of all, it's your testimony you never were able to discover the source of the live ammunition, correct?
I don't believe that's in my supplemental report. I'm not sure how you're phrasing that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. I'm asking you. When we started, we were talking about solving this question of how a live round got a movie set. Remember that?
Yes,
Okay, so I'm asking you, trying to solve that question, did you ever solve it?
I do not have any physical evidence to show where the live rounds originated from.
Yeah, they
And,
didn't.
I was asking you questions earlier.
They didn't solve that question in the Hannah trial. Yeah, look how this dude is trying to prop himself up. Some pretty bored people in the courtroom.
About how come the search happened at night, right?
Yes,
Do you remember?
I don't recall.
Okay. Why Detective Cano stood outside?
I don't recall.
Okay. Isn't the truth that you were just trying to get this over with so that the prosecutors could focus on Alec Baldwin?
No,
You personally believe Alec Baldwin committed no crime. Isn't that the truth?
So this is his the climax, right? Indignant, angry, emotional.
no.
Your Honor, please, can we approach?
Don't do that. I'm going to strike that question, okay? I'm going to strike the question, you're going to disregard it, okay, and the answer.
There is zero evidence in this case.
So interesting that the prosecutor had to say something and then the judge knew what to do after the prosecutor stood up. It's quite interesting.
That Alec Baldwin brought a live round onto set, correct?
Correct.
There is zero evidence in this case that Alec Baldwin loaded that live round into that gun, right?
Correct.
And after this, and you turn to the next chapter of this case, is when the order came from you all, meaning you, the prosecutors, Detective Hancock, to order the testing on the firearm, right?
I'm sorry, can you
Sure.
repeat that?
Wasn't a good question. As this case moved forward, after what we just discussed, you, Detective Hancock and the prosecutors, made the request to the FBI to order the accidental discharge test, right?
I don't recall when that request was made exactly.
Well, forget exactly when it was made. Do you have any general recollection?
I don't.
Okay. Are you testifying that you don't know whether it was after the PDQ search?
I don't recall.
Okay.
Thanks, Fly on the Wall. Interesting name. Earth, you've
And
missed
at that
some
time,
interesting moments.
when that test was ordered, you knew that Mr. Baldwin had told you.
I think he's angling to finish with 10 minutes to go before lunch. Let's see if it happens.
That he had just pulled the hammer of the gun and not the trigger, correct?
I don't recall.
Okay. I'm going to refresh your recollection.
See whether he looks at the clock in the next 1 or 2 minutes. Although we are actually watching this in a delayed fashion, so. Looks like it goes on for quite a bit longer.
And while I'm doing that, you did assist in the taking of the firearm withdrawal. You were involved in the requests coming from the team, right? I'm referring to you, the prosecutors, Detective Hancock, right? You understand when I say team, what I mean?
Yes.
Okay. You were involved in the request from the team to the FBI about what tests to order throughout this case. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And these were very much group decisions that you made. Of what you would test, fair?
Yes.
And everywhere in this case that you went, Detective Hancock went, right?
Yes.
So when you were at the church, the day that it happened, Detective Hancock was there, right?
Yes.
And then, when you were at the truck search, she was there, right?
Yes.
In the precinct.
So another interesting question, do you think the prosecution expected this response from the defense? Because I'm sure they have done their homework, they know their competition. And secondly, do you think they wanted this response from the defense? In other words, they didn't have to put this witness on right now. And do you think they wanted to kind of put pressure on the defense and get this out of the way as well? Or do you think in other words, who actually has the initiative here? What do you guys think? Yeah, to me, they do seem exasperated. I'd like to think it's all part of the plan, but I don't think it is.
It was Kennedy. She was there, right?
Yes.
At the PDQ search, she was there, right?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I know the prosecution know what he's trying to do, but I wonder whether they predicted that he would do this before he did it. Did they know him that
And every
well?
time something happened in this case, you all would meet with the prosecutors to keep them updated, correct?
Occasionally, yes.
Well, when you say occasionally, Investigator Pablo, what do you mean by occasionally?
I mean that I was not always in direct contact with them about every single thing that would occur.
I'm going to approach and show the witness. Yes, she has a copy.
Well, she doesn't know.
You're looking at, I don't know what line you're looking at. You told me I have a copy, I'm assuming it's the previous transcript.
It is. Again,
Page
it's
and line, please.
the body-worn camera from 10/21/21.
Page and line, please.
Page 3.
Can you see how there's definitely real antagonism between these two teams? There's real animus between, and I personally find the defense out of line, there's definitely real animus between these two sides. It's palpable.
Behind one.
Same objection, Your Honor.
What is it?
Ms. Popple is not in this transcript.
Well, what are you doing? Asking her to refresh her memory?
She was there. I'm asking her to refresh his recollection.
All right. Overruled.
Thank you. Does that refresh your recollection about what Mr. Baldwin told you at the scene?
Not particularly.
Okay. Would it be helpful if you saw the video from the lapel camera of you and Mr. Baldwin at the scene and listened to it? Would that be helpful?
No.
That wouldn't be helpful to you, Investigator Powell?
I'm not denying that these statements were made, but I do not recall all of the information that was being stated at that time.
I understand that, but you're here to do your best, right?
Yes.
And you want to be fair to Mr. Baldwin, right?
Yes.
So you don't know that if I show you the video of you at the scene, it won't refresh your recollection?
That's a rare instance where the judge has taken charge of what he's doing. Yeah, he's actually arguing with the witness. You do kind of get the sense that he thinks he's the smartest person in the room. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Christine says, I love your emoji, Auntie C. Okay, I guess we're about to get started again. I need lunch now. I also need to eat something.
Investigator Popple, are you willing to watch the body-worn camera, the lapel, from 1021 to refresh your recollection at a break?
Yes.
Okay. And you would agree with me, it may refresh your recollection, true?
Yes.
Okay. And whatever information you had from Mr. Baldwin at the time, well, let me ask you this. Withdrawn. Did you tell Mr. Baldwin, don't worry, we're going to find the source of the live ammunition, or words to that effect?
I don't recall stating that.
You don't deny it, though, do you?
No.
You and the team end up ordering the accidental discharge test, I think you called it the drop test, on the firearm in question, right?
Yes.
And when you all ordered that test, the FBI told you that this test may very well destroy the gun, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay, well, let's, I can't put anything on her screen, so I have to keep asking you that. I'm going to show you an email in a minute. But you do agree with me that you were involved in the team's decision to send that firearm off to the FBI for that testing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That firearm that you told me earlier in my examination was something that you were entrusted to keep track of and to protect, right?
Yes.
A piece of evidence that you knew was critical in this case, correct?
Yes.
And the FBI told you in no uncertain terms that if they do this test on the firearm, it would alter the condition of the firearm, correct?
I don't recall that.
Okay. We're going to pass up an email to you because I can't show you on the screen, I don't think. You can? Okay. We can show you on the screen, apparently. As I understand.
Is there a reason you can't just walk up and just?
Well,
do
I-
it?
You can find it. Listen, you can look at it too, so just come up here before,
I have it, right? Okay, we have it.
they have it.
Are we doing it?
I'm just going to pass up.
Okay, but I need to.
It's just, you never see that.
No, there's a.
Take your time, Carrie. Take your time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wait,
I have
she's
not
has to-
reviewed this. Okay, can I have a second?
Yes.
What's the portion that you expect to refresh your memory?
She's on the email.
Yeah, but what is the portion of the email that you expect to request to refresh your memory?
Do you all want to be on the recording for this? Let's just,
Point out to me how this.
Well,
is
first of all, just, if she can look at the whole document and see if it refreshes her memory,
That's
okay?
exactly what I was
Move
going
on.
to
Let's just kind of move on to the prosecutor.
Address on that email?
Yes, I do.
We'll let her, see if she can refresh her memory.
Of course, I just wanted to point out her email.
Uh-huh.
They just looked at the clock, I think.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay.
Take it back. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is true, right? You're on this email, correct?
Yes.
And on April 21st, 2022, which is after the search of the prop house, you and the team sent the firearm for testing at the FBI, correct?
Yes.
I apologize. I think I've been handed the wrong thing. Can we approach?
She can have my copy. I'll take yours then. if you want.
Hang on. We need to approach. May we approach?
Yes.
Wow, there's just so much unhappiness in this courtroom. It seems like the prosecutor doesn't like the defense doesn't like the prosecution, and the judge doesn't like the prosecution either. He definitely seems more partial to the defense. Look at that body language. Did you see that? Don't let them push you around, Carrie. Don't let them push you around. And so she's saying, wow, the one document looks a little bit different to the other one. Could this be a serious little ploy here? Look at Carrie kind of going like this. She's definitely not happy. And the defense lawyer is going like this. She's going like this. He's going like this. I don't know about you, but this morning session has felt like a whole lot of nothing. A whole lot of nothing. Which is probably the point. If the afternoon session's going to be Alex Spiro, I'm not going to cover it at all. I would like to just hear a little bit of Carrie Morrissey.
Sorry for the interruption. I'm going to ask the court reporter to read back the exact same question. Please.
And on April 21st, 2022, which is after the search. Oh, I'm so sorry. And on April 21st, 2022, which is after the search of the prop house, you and the team sent the firearm for testing at the FBI, correct? Yes.
And
quite
that
an
was
attractive lady.
Truthful testimony and accurate testimony that you just gave, correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you sent it to the FBI for accidental discharge testing, which I believe you discussed on your direct examination, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. So at the time you did that, you knew that the testing would cause this firearm
Sorry.
It's again, he's leading I'm quite surprised that the judge never ever says leading. I mean, Troconis trial that happened quite often, didn't it? What do you guys say? Didn't Alec Baldwin wear a yellow tie yesterday?
At the time that this testing was ordered, you knew that the firearm would no longer be in the same physical condition you recovered it in, correct?
Yes.
Let's take a break. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, we're going to take our lunch break. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court.
No, that in itself is fascinating that he says, let's take a break. He preempts even the judge. So he's taken the whole morning session up to the lunch session, and then he decides, he's even usurping the judge's role here by basically saying, I'm going to stop here, and now we can take a break. And then the judge says, yeah, okay, we'll take a break. It's pretty incredible. Again, you can say whatever you like, or you can say this is mindfuckery of a pretty high level mindfuckery going on. It's basically, I'm in charge of this courtroom. I tell the judge what to do. I'm presenting the prosecution's case with all the holes that's in it. And I am going to deal with these witnesses. This is my courtroom, right? That's what he's doing. Is that fair to do? Should someone allow that to happen, right? I just find it pretty incredible, and I can't help thinking,
That's the best you can do!
Anyway, so like I say, I'm not going to cover any more of this if he's going to be whatever he's doing. So I'll be back when Kerry Morrissey comes on. She doesn't come on today. I'm not going to be back. So we're on recess until Kerry comes on. I'm certainly not going to be back until Kerry comes on. If she doesn't, as I say, if she doesn't come back, I'm gone. So that's it. That's the situation. Definitely been a bummer covering this shit show. But there you go. Yeah, so it does look like he is still going to carry on with the witness. It does look that way. What do you guys reckon? I think I'm just going to call it a day. Like, I'm already at 3 hours 15 minutes. I think I'm done. What do you guys say? I mean, I really don't want to come back and wait for him to be done. Like, is he going to be another hour? It seemed like he was wrapping up, but then it also seemed like he was wrapping up 45 minutes ago. So I don't know. I really don't want to. I don't want to be covering this. I want to be covering the prosecution. Caroline says, I learned some stage magic and boggled the minds of some neighborhood kids who insisted I was a secret psychic. Okay. Hamilton says, if you're done, I'm done. Yeah, I mean, he called the break. He absolutely called the break. I don't know if I've ever seen that. I've sat through quite a few trials. I don't know if I've ever seen that. Tia says, finally worked up the goal to comment on your latest videos. Always a fan, but late to the show. Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys, for being here. Mods, thank you very much. Thanks for the super chats. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow, unless he's going to be on for the whole morning. I'm definitely not going to cover that. So let's see what happens tomorrow. Yeah, if he raps, you can tweet me. But yeah, I highly doubt that I'm going to be back. So, Hannah is being called to court tomorrow. I don't know whether that's going to be a storm in a teacup. She may just plead the fifth. But that should be pretty interesting regardless. So I guess we'll see what happens. Okay, guys. Don't forget, I'm going to be doing a Van Gogh letters this weekend. I think Saturday. So look out for that. I'm busy working on a really interesting thing on the John Benet Ramsey case. So look out for that as well. Take care. All the best. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Speak to you guys soon. Ciao.